Uh,
All right, everyone, the red light is on and we're recording. This is Mark back for another episode of the Veteran Semi-Professional. So today's an interview episode where I'm interviewing a veteran about their life and career after the military. All in an effort to help you if you're trying to figure out what are you going to do once you can put your hands back in your pockets, grow out your hair, and start wearing these things called quote unquote civilian clothes. This is a show for you. So I talk to people about what they've been up to after the military to show you and your family what are some different options, how you can get started on certain career paths, and what life can look like outside of the uniform. Okay, so super pumped for today's guest. He's an awesome dude. He's got a great business that he's in the process of building, and we're gonna be talking about his transition and a couple of businesses that he's tried along the way. So Charles, if you can take a minute and introduce yourself, man, I'd appreciate it.
yeah, for sure. First of all, thanks, Mark, for having me on the show, and looking forward to sharing everything. My name is Charles Masters Rodriguez, Army vet, and now founder and CEO of MK3 Industries out here in Miami Beach, Florida.
Miami Beach, not a bad place to live. Okay.
True that, I will say. Definitely really hot right now. I don't know what's going on, but it's definitely nice. The beach definitely
Yeah,
helps.
yeah. Are you from Miami area or like Southern Florida kind of?
So I'm originally from Puerto Rico,
Okay.
so kind of close to home. But
Right.
yeah,
Right.
definitely part of the tropics.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Okay. Okay. Cool. Cool. All right. So first question, what did you do in the military?
Yeah, so I was a Army dive officer in the military, which is pretty interesting because most people, even in the Army, don't really know that we have
I
divers.
I was gonna say, I mean, I was in the army myself and I didn't know we had dive officers. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. There's about I think like 125 plus or something like that in the Army. But yeah, it's branch engineers. So we do kind of like the engineer as like an officer, you do like the engineer bullock route, and then there's two basically times where you can kind of like apply for that selection during the summer times in Bullock. And then it's about they have like phase one in Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri, which is like 3 weeks if you get selected, and then phase two is in Panama City Beach, Florida, at the Naval Dive and Salvage Training Center.
Gotcha. Cool. Okay. Yeah, truly did not know that there were army dive officers. I honestly didn't even know if you told me there was anyone in the army whose job it was to be dive anything. Honestly, I probably would have been a little surprised from that outside of, special forces guys with a qualification or something. But okay. Fun fact I learned today. Um,
Yeah.
cool, man. So talk to me a little bit about your journey from the army. Okay, good, bad, ugly, sideways. What were some bright spots you might want to point out for people, and maybe what were some speed bumps along the way that maybe caught you up.
Yeah. So you're saying like within the military, basically?
Yeah, yeah. So like once you decided, hey, uh, you know, being a dive officer was fun, but I'm ready to get out, and you actually started the process to leave, and then we'll kind of include in there maybe the first year or two post separation, like that time frame.
Yeah. Um, Yeah, that was a very interesting time in my life, I would say. It's funny because, like, us like being in the military, I talk to a lot of like that, and it's kind of like always the thing that we've always wanted type thing. So, you do it, and then when you start to hit kind of like that transition point of a year or 2 years, you start getting really angsty, right? It's very nerve-wracking. Um, I had I was getting medically retired off, so it was kind of I went through like the PEB program, physical evaluation board, MEB, medical evaluation board side. Um, so that was kind of a smoother transition, but it was still yeah, it was not easy. I would say the army has done a much better job now, I think, at like kind of like um preparing us to exit, but even back this was back in 2019. I didn't know what I was going to do, right? I was trying to get all the certifications that I could prior to kind of exiting out. I knew that, I'd always wanted to be an entrepreneur. Um, so I actually started my first company, which was like an ATM company, right before I was getting out, just to have something. Um, but yeah, that like transition of like what if, like I don't really know what's gonna happen after was pretty nerve wracking for me.
Yeah. Also, you're probably the first person I've ever heard describe the med process as smooth. So usually when I'm talking to people who are getting med boarded, they're like, "This is the worst thing I've ever been through." And I think probably a huge part of that is just the uncertainty. Like you just don't know how long it's going to take, right? So it's really hard to plan. Planning it as a skill bridge internship or submit job applications or apply to schools or whatever it is, just because you don't have like a hard set end date like most people who are kind of putting in their ETS paperwork. Was there something about yours and I'm just kind of curious if there was some path in the process that maybe made it a little smoother for you?
So when I say smoother, it's because like I kind of at least like knew how the process was going to be.
Okay.
So really doing most of my research about the process prior to, and then talking to people that had already done
Right.
the MEB like helped out a lot.
Gotcha.
Whenever they say like, oh, it's just 6 months, like no, like you expect like mine lasted over a year.
Yeah.
So you know, so I would say smooth as in like I kind of knew what to expect, but
Gotcha.
still not smooth. Like I still had, well, I'll talk about it a little later on, but I still had some issues to where I thought I was going to get the GI Bill when I got out, because that was covered with a 30-day disability. Talk to someone at the VA, they're like, yeah, you're going to get it. I get out ready to like use the GI Bill to study like when I moved to California, and they're like, I put it in the application. They're like, yeah, you don't qualify. Like,
Uh,
wait, what is going on right now? Apparently, I only had 3 days after my 5 year because I had to pay back for the
right.
academy. But
Right.
those are kind of some of the things like that you kind of look back and you're like, man. Um, so do your research, talk to every single person you can, and even when you're transitioning out, like don't take people's word for it, especially when they work the VA or like the GI Bill side.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. Yeah. I'll totally echo the sooner you can find someone who's even just like a couple of months ahead of you in the process. So many nuances like you will understand better. I was super fortunate in that like when I was getting out, my company commander was also getting out. She was probably like 3, 4 months ahead of me in the process. And so she was just telling myself like every day, like, oh yeah, like I knew about, uncover this, go to this place, go talk to Jerry down in office 3A or something. He'll hook you up with this. And it was like one of the things that kind of pisses me off about the whole transition journey, like how we get people out separated out from the military, is like so much of the goodness, so much of like your access to benefits or resources or even just like a good person to talk to think through something. It's almost like this like lore, like it gets passed down from person to person. There's no kind of like single consolidated resource of like, here's all the shit you need to know how to go do, right? And I've tried to solve that a little bit where I can, like in part through this podcast, but so much of it is just like I know a dude who told me to do this and it seemed legit, so I went and did it. And that's just
yeah,
kind of absurd.
yeah, no, it's exactly like that. And like as it keeps getting like transferred, like you don't even really know what was the actual like truth to the situation. Um, but yeah, I definitely agree. Like just talking to everybody, and then watching out with what you hear and follow too, like I did. Because that's kind of one of the things that I look back and I was like, God, that just fucked up, but it's all good.
Yeah, yeah, it's the cost of doing business sometimes, I think.
Yeah.
Okay, so you had started this ATM business, and I'm assuming this was an ATM route. You get the cut of people making transactions, and you got to go in and fill in the cash and everything on a consistent basis and everything. Like, right? That's kind of the rough model here.
Yep. Yep. So I basically kind of started like following a bunch of like entrepreneurial Instagrams and stuff like that. And like I said, I didn't really know what I wanted to get into. And I was like, well, I'll start with that. It was kind of like a low cost entry type thing. An ATM, if you get it new, will cost like $3,200. You install that, and it's exactly like you said. Like you partner with kind of a location, could be gas station or a mall or something like that, and then you basically do a profit split with them. And then you can either, you know, recharge the ATM yourself with your own cash, which is capital intensive, or you can contract someone out and then they take a little cut of that too. but I really enjoyed it a lot. Actually, still have one of my last stations that I'll be selling out soon, but it kind of forced me to start learning business in a very low stress environment. I opened an LLC. I started kind of doing market research. The first thing you do is sales, right? Because you're trying to like sell a location, and it's a hard sell sometimes because they don't want to have this permanent fixture in their spot. So, but it kind of started honing some of the skills that now I see and I look back and I'm like, man, I'm so thankful that I did that. And I'm not going to say that I made like tons of money with it, right? It's profitable and it has been profitable, pretty passively. But like I said, those skills were invaluable. And now I have, a seasoned um, company, right? So a lot of things that I did, still help me today.
Yeah, I think it's a great two big lessons there. Like one, I think it's a great like first business to kind of go after. It's fairly simplistic operations. It's also kind of the nice thing where I mean, depending on like the size and scope of your operation, like you're probably not going to have that much demand on a day-to-day basis, especially if you're at a place where you personally are kind of managing all the different machines, then if you don't have an employee out there doing that or something, um there's probably gonna be like that much demand on a day-to-day basis, right? So then it's like time for you to go sell more, do market research and everything, versus like the operations of just kind of keeping things going, right? I compare that to think of like a landscaping business, like during the summer everything is gonna be focused on like getting lawns mowed every single day, right? Because like that's what's going on, and you're gonna have less time and focus for like sales and marketing. Whereas like this, I feel like that dynamic is probably a bit reversed. And please correct me if I'm wrong on that. But that's just kind of like my assumption in hearing this.
Yeah, no, no, exactly right. Like it's a very there's not many moving parts, right? You need to refill the ATM. I was refilling it, once a week, and then sometimes twice a week once my capital started increasing. Um, Low maintenance. A new ATM doesn't break down. The used ones might, but like the new ones are pretty rock solid. And then you just cut a check to the location owner once a month. Very very low stress. Same thing with like the vending machine type of business. A little bit more complicated because you're dealing with food, but still, like I said, it was very good for my learning aspect of business.
So you'd say like you kind of always knew you wanted to be an entrepreneur. Was this, did you see family members who had businesses, or you just like, I just want to carve my own destiny? Like, what was kind of the motivation there?
Yeah. So my first entrepreneurial like vest ever or whatever was sixth grade. I remember I don't know why I started this, but I started making these popsicle guns. Um, and
Okay,
like
okay.
they were,
Sorry. What is a popsicle gun?
yeah. So literally, like, those popsicle sticks,
Uh-huh.
or like the ones that they put in your tongue, like at the doctor to like check your tongue
Yeah,
out or
yeah, yeah,
whatever.
yeah, yeah.
So I like constructed like a little gun out of it, and then I used rubber bands to kind of construct it. And then I made it like a mechanism to where like you just pull the trigger and then the rubber gun shoots from the popsicle gun.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So I'd sell those for like $20 a pop.
Twenty
And
dollars a pop?
yeah,
Oh my God,
yeah.
man. We're getting into the
But I
popsicle
sold
gun
it.
business. Yeah.
I know. I sold it with like the ammunition too. I was like, here's a rubber band bag. Like, here's this, here's that. Um, and I think I remember I made like $200 with my first week. Uh, and
Okay.
it was such a rush.
Dude, I'm like totally picturing you like walking down like the middle school hallway with your backpack, like meeting dudes in the bathroom and being like, yo, man, you want a hot gun? It's got no serial
Listen,
number. You're like
it's so
the
funny because
middle
it was
school
exactly
are.
like that. It was exactly like that. I had to have it in the backpack. I had to do it in the bathroom because you can't do that outside. They're like, "What are you guys
Oh
doing?"
my God, that's hilarious.
But it's funny because like it lasted a week. It was great. Made $200. I was like, "What a high! This is amazing!" And then the teachers were like, "Applaud it," because they started seeing people use it. They're like, "You're gonna take an eye out with that thing." Um, but that was kind of like my first and I was
And a good
hooked.
first lesson about regulation, how it comes in and changes the market.
Exactly. Exactly. You got it.
Oh my gosh, that's hilarious.
Yeah, but it does come with it comes from my dad. My dad is a small business owner. He was actually Air Force National Guard, like lieutenant colonel, and then he kind of had his own business. He's a technician for like radars for like the yachts and like the ships, the container ships and the cruises and all that stuff. So the Furunos on top, those things that are rotating. Um, so I saw him kind of do that business and like start it up. Dude was always working, hard work. I mean, you have to go all the way up to the mast too. Like, dude's old, like doing this. And I went on one job with him and I saw how much work it was. And I was like, there's got to be an easier way to do this. Um, so I definitely got a little bit of that like entrepreneurial blood from him, but I never took over that family business. And to this day, because I'm just like, that is not what I want to do. I think there's easier ways to like build a business. But yeah,
Yeah, I think it's a great point to bring up. There's sometimes like there's just easier ways to make money, right? And it could be that maybe your dad just I don't know nothing about him, but like maybe he just really enjoyed like the problem of troubleshooting this radar system, right? So like to him, maybe it didn't seem as hard because he like enjoyed the challenge of trying to troubleshoot the system, or like anybody out there who maybe has a very labor intensive business, like they enjoy the labor, like they enjoy what it's being done. You can also anyone else can look at that and say like I have zero interest in that, like that type of work just doesn't interest me. Let me go find an easier way to make money, and like that's totally fine to say this business doesn't interest me, let me do something else.
yeah, 100%. It has to match your lifestyle too. He does well. It's a six-figure business, but like I said, like the amount of effort that you have to put in for that, and then growth-wise, it's harder to scale, in my opinion. But yeah, definitely got that from him. And then the kind of like the final, it's funny because like I just keep like jumping into these entrepreneurs. When I was at the academy, you obviously weren't supposed to have a job, right? You were a cadet.
Right.
Uh, I hooked up with a small business owner that was selling custom suits. His name is Donovan in England, and I saw one of his like shows or whatever because they like come to the academy and they start selling or whatever. And I got his information and I actually contacted him. I was like, listen, I think I can market this like better at the academy for you, whatever. Um, and fast forward, I start kind of like interning with him, working for him, whatever. Uh, within that year, like I think we went from 100,000 in sales to 400,000 in sales in the next year. And then I was taking commissions and then I kept using that to buy more suits, which would get me more sales. Uh, but that was kind of like one of my, that's really when I fell in love with it, and especially sales. Um, and today I still have all those suits I use, but
I mean,
yeah,
it's actually funny. I'm not sure if I maybe met Donovan through you or you through Donovan or something, but I've talked to Donovan a couple times. Great guy. But I think
yeah,
also kind of like understanding the market there in West Point a little bit. Like you have a kind of captured audience, right? I'm sure there's probably not too many suit stores around Highland Falls. Is that the name of the town around there? Um,
yeah,
if anyone, I've only been there a couple of times, but I'll tell anyone who's been there, like ain't much going on in that town. So there's probably not like a nice suit store. But you got people who are like, hey, you know, young 20s, starting my kind of professional life here. Got a little extra change in my pocket right now. I'm like, yeah, sure. Like, I kind of want to buy a nice suit. I got, someone's wedding or something I'm going to. Right. And so they're like, hey, you don't have to travel, get on a train, travel to New York City. Like, your boy Charles is here with some nice looking suits. You want to get one of these? Right.
yeah. No, it's exactly that. And then you start learning about like the target audience and spending power, right? The juniors get a $36,000 loan at 0.75% interest.
Right.
So they were obviously ready to kind of like, spend it and then go to New York City with their new suits. So yeah, definitely interesting. And it's funny you mentioned Highland Falls because whenever I like whenever I tell them about the academy and like the area around it, I was like, just picture where the apocalyptic like zombie, start might happen, and it would be right outside of
So
the
true.
academy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but yeah.
Okay. Okay. So we've kind of like back and forth a little bit talking about, uh, selling, illegal street guns and in the bathroom in middle school, like your dad's business. Talked about standing up this ATM thing, like as you're on your way out of the military. Um, okay, so you had this ATM business for a little bit. Then what was kind of like the next thing you decided to dig your teeth into?
Yeah. So once I medically retired in 2019, I had a group of friends, right? And they were kind of like all successful, all connected, and they were actually in the cannabis industry. So they were coming down for a trip to Hawaii. I went on a little cruise with them, and then we started talking. I had just gone out, so I was kind of like lost. I was trying to like discover what the next move was or whatever. And they were like, "Listen, you can come out there and you can kind of, get into this industry." So that's what I did. I took kind of like a leap. Went to California, got into brand management for a grow out there, a big grow, and then also a dispensary. Learned a lot about the industry. It was definitely like kind of like the grain rush. So there was a lot of money being made. Definitely an interesting industry as well, kind of like the wild, wild west. Um, a lot of room for growth, especially on the business side. Um,
Pun,
but
pun intended there, room for growth.
yeah,
Sorry,
but
can't help
no,
myself.
it's true. I didn't even know. I was like, wait. But no, that was good. Like I said, I learned a lot. I was able to kind of help them market, grow that side. And while I was out there, I started getting into e-commerce, and that's where I found like my passion. That was like my love, and to this day, it's like what I focus on. Um, so pre-pandemic, I started seeing kind of like the trends of what was going on. And then I started seeing, because you can always like do market research and see what's being bought. I started seeing like masks were going to be, mandatory. So I bought a bunch of masks wholesale and then created a private label brand called New Facial, um, and kind of, marketed it as like fashionable yet comfortable masks. Um, and that took off pretty well. Um, so I kind of like started getting into that niche, and then did really well for a little bit, did some good Facebook ads, got some good traffic to the website. Then mass became political. People started reporting the Facebook ads because they didn't like masks being sold. And my Facebook account for ads got permanently disabled. So
Wow.
that, yeah,
Because people
yeah,
were reporting your ads as like political speech, I guess. And
yeah,
wow. Okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
Um, And that's when I learned my first hard lesson in business, which is always have multiple revenue and traffic streams for your business. I had all my eggs into Facebook ads and that traffic. And then when that kind of like shut down, I was shut out of luck. Right. So I kind of closed that down and, still had the LLC like open, but like closed that side of the business down and then focused on the brand management side for the time being. But yes, definitely interesting. That was like kind of like my one of my first big failure, I would say. So I learned a lot on that one, which I'm pretty appreciative for.
Yeah. Well, hey, I mean, sometimes it's good to get a failure in early, especially if it's not like, a giant one that doesn't ruin you. Like it probably, it hurts the ego, maybe hurts the bank account a little bit, but uh every story I've ever heard of pretty much any entrepreneur is like it took them 3 or 4 tries and like 3 or 4 fuck ups before they finally found the one that like they hit the home run on. And it's usually like the lessons learned from those screw ups that made the home run possible. Is, rarely do you find someone who just like knocks it out of the park on their first time at bat. Okay, that really happens. I'm kind of curious. Like you mentioned, fell in love with e-commerce as like this industry? Like what in particular about e-commerce attracted you of this is the thing, like I just like this fascinates me, I love it.
Yeah, for sure. And I think I mentioned that too, like previously, like you got to like explore and discover on the entrepreneurial world. Like I said, I tried like the mass thing, I tried like ATM thing, or this, that. I love e-commerce because it's so simple, you know. It's so simple and like anybody can kind of like set it up, right? And it's basically disrupted, the entire market, no matter what industry it is, right? So anything online that you can kind of just sell, and then credit card gets charged like immediately, goes into your account, like um so I really like the simplicity aspect of it, and the fact that there's a framework to building an e-commerce brand, and it's a very um, step by step framework, and it's very scalable as well. So all things that I like. Also, you don't really have to be in that location, and your risk is a lot lower, right? Instead of like going, and buying a brick and mortar or leasing this huge, location and putting all these operating costs up front, like you don't have to do that. So I would say that that's kind of like that's really why I got into e-commerce and why I still love it today. Um, and most of well, I'd say like 99% of my sales are all online. I don't have a brick and mortar. I just have a warehouse that I lease out here.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's a couple of things I'll touch on there. I mean, from the aspect of, creating a store to sell something on, I mean, a reasonably competent person who's, interacted with some basic software before can build a pretty basic storefront within a couple hours. All right. It's, platforms like Shopify, it is not rocket science. Okay. It's really not. They make it pretty stupid simple to put together like a pretty basic website and start selling stuff. Okay. So that's not super hard. I think, there's a number of different ecom models out there, but so many of them you can do remote. There's people who have there's tons of people who have ecom businesses where their entire team is, maybe remote all over the world, or maybe it's just one person who's running it. And I think, especially to those of us who spent, years at shithole bases in bumfuck America somewhere, like the idea of
Yeah.
being able to, have this thing that transports around with you is pretty nice. Right. Um, and I think for vets, one of the things that can be attractive about ecom is, like you mentioned, it's at this point there's it's like almost formulaic, the kind of business plan to follow. It's like do these things, stay consistent, and like pay attention to your numbers, and like keep driving forward, and like eventually like you will find success is typically like what I've seen. Like the great thing about e-commerce is that there's so much data with it. And like I'm saying all you have to do, but like you keep paying attention to those numbers and still keep, problem solving on like, how do I improve my click-through rate? How do I improve my open rate? How do I improve, um, people not dropping out once they get to the basket and everything? Like, how do I just keep improving that stuff? And like, they're metrics that you just like keep trying to attack day in and day out. And like, if you keep doing that, like your business will grow. And I think like people who spend some time in the military are maybe a little bit more hardwired to like want to have those types of things to just kind of keep like gnawing and grinding at to make that sustainable business.
Yeah, no, it's exactly how you described, right? It's very data driven too, right? Like it's hard when you have a brick and mortar, like it's hard to keep track of, okay, customers in and out, like, customers doing this and that. You know, think of it as like having a video camera in your brick and mortar and watching the customer throughout the entire process. Now you're just doing that online, and there's so many tools now, like AI, there's like, you can like actually use like click heat, so like you can follow the mouse of like customers and see where they're doing A/B testing.
Oh, that's cool. I didn't know about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, it's some insane stuff. It's insane stuff. Um, there's some really cool things that you can do with ecom. Now I will, give this caveat. I mean, it's like any business, right? It's like any industry. It's like it's not. I'm not saying like it's simple, right? Like I'm not going to be the one that's going to tell you like, oh, get rich quick doing Amazon and ecom and all these. Listen, it's a lot of hard work. You learn a lot. There's going to be some times where you lose a little bit of money just to learn. Um, but like I said, like eventually if you continue it, and then it always comes with like good planning too, which I've learned the hard way. Like um the more time that I've spent with like my small business, the more importance I give to like planning, like, hooking up with your local SBDC, having them do like your business plan, your marketing plan, like your target audience. Like most people, which I'm, I support, right? Like just jumping in and getting started, because you have to learn some way. But as I get more seasoned in the business, I put even more importance now on the planning aspect because you can have a great e-commerce store, but if you're like targeting the wrong audience, or you're targeting someone that doesn't have the spending power, but you have like a higher cost product, like, you're just not going to do it right. Um, so
And a bit of encouragement I'll kind of give to anyone out there who's listening is, I'm not going to try to pretend that I've talked to every single small business owner out there in the world, but routinely I hear from small business owners that other owners around them seemingly like don't know even some of the basics, right? Like they don't know how to read a balance sheet or a profit and loss, and these are not super complicated, statements by any means, or like they aren't doing any planning, right? It's totally just like shoot from the hip. Okay. So take that, that discipline, the planning steps you learn from the military and just like apply that day in, day out and just grind like a little bit to for that, marginal improvement every single day. And like you probably can't help yourself, but find results out there somehow. Okay.
yeah, 1000%. Definitely
So
agree.
how did you come to your current business and can you describe what it is for folks?
Yeah, so MK3 Industries is an innovative wholesale distribution company. We focus on automotive parts and accessories, mainly on fleet maintenance. So anything that has to do with like maintaining fleet vehicles, uh, you know, wheel nut indicators, tire balancing, all that stuff. Um, so it took me some time to kind of get into that industry. Like I said, I did do like the e-commerce side, but going back to the planning side, I started looking at what was going on. I've had this business now, this business model for about 2 years. Um, I started seeing how the recession was coming in, right? You can kind of see that. And then I started doing like some industry research and seeing, what industry was kind of like recession proof. Everything kept pointing into like automotive parts. Um, and then obviously like there's more used vehicles out there, so they need more maintenance. Um, I looked at the KR, the compounding annual growth rate for the market as well, like a lot of market research, and then plus like the auto industry is fun. Like even the people that are in it, they're kind of very small business, old school. Um, so it was a very, I don't know, logical trajectory for me to get in. Um, but obviously it's funny because like this is a bootstrap business, right? I don't have any outside funding. It's just me, as a 100% owner. Um, it's hard bootstrapping a business and kind of like getting everything done and doing it all yourself and like keeping the expenses low and then keeping track of operating costs and then putting the marketing hat on and putting the advertising hat on, the finance hat. Um, but it's super, I would say, beneficial to do because then you learn the fundamentals about each aspect of the business. Um, and I think that that's something that, I don't like downplay like, getting funding, but I think that that's something that people miss when they don't bootstrap. Running a business kind of like on fumes is you learn all that stuff, you know. Um, so a little bit of background about that.
Yeah. Can you talk? I'm always super interested for the audience perspective of just like the early days of just getting. Can you walk us through what the first maybe 12 to 18 months of this looked like from, okay, you've done your market research, you think automotive industry, this is maybe where I want to go. How soon until like you had a website up? How soon until you had, like maybe had your first sale? And then like I know recently like you moved into a warehouse, and like at this point, I don't know if you maybe started off doing drop shipping and now you're maybe doing private label stuff or something. Just talk through some of those points for us, please.
Yeah. So when I originally came out here, I started with drop shipping, right? And I actually did not start with the automotive. I kind of like started with drop shipping anything, right? That was kind of doing well. After some trial and error, I started figuring out like I can't do that, right? Like I can't focus on everything and just drop ship everything. So then I started getting more into the auto side. Um, Drop shipping enough got me enough revenue to say, okay, like, drop shipping is costing me margins. Like I should start keeping inventory, right? So that was kind of like my natural transition into the wholesale side. And I will say that I used, remember I told you before, kind of like ecom was great, but there's some risk, right, with getting involved, especially like upfront costs. I started selling all my stuff on Amazon to start because you don't have to pay for the traffic, right? The audience is already there, so it's less risk.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I started with that, fulfilled by merchant. Then I started sending my stuff in, fulfilled by Amazon. Um, as my revenue grew on the Amazon side, I said, okay, now I can sell those things on other marketplaces. So then I moved to the second one that was kind of popular with automotive, which was eBay. So, same product line, just now selling on eBay. Remember that lesson of multiple streams of revenue that I learned the hard way. So I used that. So then I established eBay, and then I said, okay, cool. Now I'm going to go to Walmart because now Walmart's trying to compete with Amazon on that business model. So I drove all three of those revenue sides, and that's where I started getting most of my customers. Um, and finally, all that revenue and those profits have now allowed me to build my website, which is coming up soon, the B2B distribution website. So it's been a very like slow, controlled growth, um, which has been super beneficial to me because I've kind of learned a lot, and I've been able to. I mean, we've been growing like 100% plus every single year. So if you grow too quickly, you're gonna like you might screw up your business, right? If you grow too slow, you might lose sales, and competition might. So it's a hard balance to trying to grow right. And then in terms of the warehouse side, right? If you want to do Amazon FBA, if you want to send your inventory to Amazon, you need to send them pallets of stuff, right? The warehouse made sense because I needed a docking bay to get pallets down. Right. At first I was just doing this all out of my apartment, which is typical small business bootstrap stuff. So once I was able to get that, that kind of like helped with my business model. I didn't have to use third party logistics anymore to send my stuff to Amazon, which was taking a margin of my cuts. Now I could do it myself. Um, so that was kind of like the transition into that, and now that's what I do at the moment. I partnered with Saltbox, which is like a co-working warehouse space. Think of it like a WeWork, but for warehousing,
Oh, cool. Yeah.
especially for the e-com side. Um, and I also received a grant from Veterans Florida that helped me with the, I would say first months of that overhead, which has been amazing. So another point for small business owners out there, especially veterans, is there's so many resources out there, and there's a lot of free money that you can use, especially starting up your business.
Yeah, yeah. I'll touch on the kind of that grant piece real quick because I get questions like this from all the time. Like someone's like, "Hey, I want to start a business. Where's free money for veterans?" Right? It's definitely out there. I will say like typically you're probably not going to see. I think maybe the largest amount I've seen is maybe 50K from somebody. Okay, but it's usually going to
Mm,
be in like the 5 to 10, maybe 20K size, right? Which just like you mentioned, like for like the first, month or two could mean everything, right? Like that
Yeah.
covers rents, that covers maybe basic utilities and stuff like that. So don't write it off. It's not helpful. It can be helpful. Okay. Sometimes I think people message me thinking that there's like, I don't know, some like mysterious $1 billion fund out there that just is like writing checks to veterans left and right. Like, and I'm telling you, it doesn't exist. Okay. And like and you're gonna have to go put in the work to like find these grants and then also, put in a good application for them. And you're probably not going to be the only one applying for it. So like do a good job on it. Okay. So that's just kind of Mark's quick PSA to everyone. Like this stuff is out there. It's probably not as predominant as you think that it is, but nonetheless, that doesn't mean that you shouldn't go after it because, kind of as Charles mentioned, it can be super helpful, especially in the start.
Yeah, for sure. That grant gave me literally 2 months of breathing room,
Yeah.
and then cash flows your bloodlines, your business. So obviously that helped out. But it's just like you said, and you shouldn't use it as a crutch either. I think a lot of people kind of like, I just need another grant. Like I need like like if you're spending time like applying for your grant and you're the only one there, like now your time is being used there, and if you don't win it, then um,
Yeah, that's a great point. Like you're kind of go back to like your business plan, thinking about this here a little bit. The crux of your revenue stream shouldn't be banking on winning this grant, right?
yeah.
Keep on business as usual and like plan on not getting it. And then if you get it, great. It's a nice to have. It shouldn't be a need to have kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. Well, cool, man. So we're winding down to the last little bit of the show here. And so in a minute, I'm going to pass it back over to you. Just provide any last thoughts, parting shots, words of wisdom, last things you want to touch on for the crowd. But before we do, there's a question I always ask my guests at the end of the show. So think back to your time in the Army. What was the best and or worst chow hall you ever went to?
Oh, that one's easy. Okay. So best was, let's start with best. At the Naval Dive and Salvage Training Center, oh my gosh. We would have like we'd have like surf and turf. They'd have like fresh guac like every single time. I mean, and we were just eating like monsters anyways. Which by the way, like coming from the army, we get some scraps in terms of like, because you go to like the Air Force stations or like the Navy, man, these guys get fed,
Oh
they
my
get some,
gosh. My
facilities too.
literally like my last training exercise this was my last like month in the Army. I went out to White Sands Missile Range, and my company was doing an exercise with one of the SEAL teams, and like they brought their own chefs with them and everything. And so like I was eating what the SEAls were getting, and I was like, dude, you guys eat like this all the time? This is insane. This is great. Like I
Yeah,
would I would pay to go to this. Yeah, it was great. Totally get it.
literally wildness.
Okay, so
Uh,
dive school was amazing, food wise.
yes, yes. Um, yeah, worst channel. I don't know if I blacked out while eating because I just didn't. Well, so I went to, this is not an army station, but I went to Ecuadorian jungle school, and I ate at their chow hall. That was that was very interesting. Um, they serve like their like juices or whatever in bags, um, and we're just like in the Amazon jungle, like eating out of like these like metal cans, and I'm just sweating in my food like as I'm eating. I just remember the entire experience being like, when they say like embrace the suck, like I was eating the suck, like I was the suck. So I remember that period, and I was like, dude, um, yeah, that would have been the worst.
Yeah, if you had said Ecuadorian jungle school, I'm like it's gonna be a 0-1. It was either gonna be like amazing, authentic Ecuadorian food, or it was gonna be the worst, which ended up being the latter. So sorry about that, brother.
Yeah, they're all experiences. They're
Yep,
good.
yep. You live to tell the tale. Well, Charles, hey man, I really appreciate your time afternoon. I know as a business owner, you got a lot going on, so I appreciate you want to come on and share your experience with the audience and everything. So I just want to pass back over to you one last time to leave anything out for the crowd that maybe we didn't get to touch on. And just any parting shots, words of wisdom you want to give out to folks before we close out.
Yeah, for sure. I definitely want to touch on kind of like that transitionary period, like coming out of the military, or even like right before you're going to leave. Um, it's a weird position. You're kind of lost. You need to discover some things. A little part of, no one told me this, right? But I kind of realize, and I talk to vets now, is like a little part of you dies when you get out, because you kind of identify yourself always as, I've always wanted to serve and be part of that greater tribe. So when you get out, you really are kind of lost. So you have to like re-identify yourself and like rediscover like your values and like what you want to do with your life towards the future. Um, but I just want to remind, especially all the vets out there, is like your tribe still exists, right? You're like leaving active duty or you're like leaving the service, but you'll still always have your veteran tribe. And it took me a year, a couple years to get back to those roots. And I'm glad that I found that tribe again, because it's definitely made all the difference, especially as a small business owner as well. So nothing but positive vibes for all you guys getting out.
Yeah, I'll echo a lot of that. Or I'll echo really all of that, and I love the bit about a little bit of you does kind of die when you leave, right? And I think like that's totally normal. And I also think that like that's kind of fine. Okay. The way I look at it is like, yeah, there was part of Mark that died and then like grew into a new Mark elsewhere.
Yes.
Okay. So like, the everything bounced out. It just, and like, a different person kind of emerged, but that isn't, I'm totally fine with that. And I like that. Okay. So it's a bumpy road for everybody. I shouldn't say everyone. Occasionally, I find a occasional random person who's like, "Oh yeah, hey, it's smooth sailing through the whole thing," and I'm like, "You're a freak. No one does it." Uh, I had one Marine '06 who was like, "Oh, I thought the transition program from the Marine Corps was fantastic," and I was like, "Okay,
Oh
that's a
man.
bunch of bullshit, dude."
Yeah. All right,
Anyway,
dude.
sorry, digress here too much, but let the journey happen, and stay positive, and totally like part of the reason I do this is I want to show you all that, this tribe will always be with you, can always be with you if you want to reach out to them. Okay. Doesn't have to be your only tribe. It doesn't have to be, 100% of your identity, but at some point, we all stood shoulder to shoulder in some fashion. And like, you can reach back into that formation and ask for help in any way, and you will find it, guaranteed.
Yep. Yeah, 1000%.
All right, man. Well, hey, appreciate your time. Been great talking to you. Really appreciate it, dude. So thank you.
Yeah, likewise, Mark. Thanks again, brother. Thanks for having me.
For everyone listening, please like, subscribe, leave a review, and I'll see you all next week. Take care. All right, cool, man.
Sweet, brother. I hope that was